The thundering of hooves was all Clara Caldwell could hear over the frantic beating of her heart as she urged her horse faster along the dusty trail. A stolen wedding dress trailed behind her like a tattered white flag of surrender, catching on branches and thorns as she fled into the unknown expanse of the Kansas plains. It was 1875, and she was running from more than just a man. She was running from a prison sentence disguised as matrimony. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps as she glanced over her shoulder. No one following yet, but they would be soon. Her father was not a man who accepted disobedience, especially when it meant losing his business arrangement with Harmon Blackstone, the wealthy cattle baron whose reputation for cruelty was matched only by his fortune. At 45, he had buried 2 wives already, and Clara had no intention of becoming the third. The early summer sun beat down mercilessly as she pushed forward. Her horse, a chestnut mare borrowed without permission from her father's stable, was beginning to show signs of fatigue. Clara knew they couldn't continue at this pace much longer. The rolling hills of the Kansas prairie offered little shelter, and soon she would need to find somewhere, anywhere, to rest. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Clara spotted a small homestead in the distance. A modest cabin with smoke rising from the chimney stood beside a barn and corral. Desperation outweighing caution, she guided her exhausted mount toward it. As she approached, a tall figure emerged from the barn. The man stood with his hand resting casually on his holstered revolver, watching her approach with cautious eyes. He wore a dust-covered denim shirt, worn leather chaps, and a wide-brimmed hat that cast shadows across his face. "Something I can help you with, madam." His voice was deep, but not unkind, carrying the slight drawl common to men who spent their days working under the western sun. Clara pulled her horse to a stop, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. Her once elegant wedding dress was torn and dirty, her auburn hair falling loose from what had been an elaborate updo that morning. I need help," she managed, her voice cracking. "Please." The man stepped forward, and Clara could see him clearly now. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a stormy sky. He took in her appearance with a quick, assessing gaze. "Seems like you've had quite a day," he said, his expression softening. "I'm Adam Forrester." Clara hesitated. She'd been raised to be proper, to never speak to strange men without an introduction, to maintain decorum at all times. But propriety had been left behind in her father's house, along with the life that had been planned for her. "Clara Caldwell," she replied, then added, "I'm running away." Adam Forrester's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did a flicker of understanding. "From what I can see, Miss Caldwell, you're running away from a wedding." He gestured to her dress. "Question is, should I be expecting an angry groom to come charging up my trail?" Clara's fingers tightened on the reins. "Not a groom, my father and the man he arranged for me to marry, a man named Harmon Blackstone." At the mention of the name, Adam's jaw tightened. "Blackstone," he repeated, and there was no missing the edge in his voice. "I know the man, or know of him, rather." "Then you understand why I couldn't," Clara began, but a wave of dizziness washed over her. The exhaustion, fear, and dehydration of her desperate flight suddenly caught up with her. She swayed in the saddle. Adam moved quickly, stepping forward to steady her. "Whoa there, let's get you inside before you fall." With gentle hands, he helped her dismount. Clara's legs nearly buckled beneath her as her feet touched the ground, and Adam kept a steadying arm around her waist. "I don't mean to impose," she said weakly. "No imposition. I've got a spare room. You can rest there until you figure out your next move." He glanced toward the horizon. "Anyone tracking you yet?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know. I left during the ceremony preparations. There was confusion and I took my chance. But my father won't let this go, Blackstone even less so. Adam nodded grimly. Well, they'll have a hard time finding you here. My place isn't on many maps. He led her toward the cabin, still supporting much of her weight. Can you walk a bit more, or should I carry you? Clara straightened, summoning what remained of her strength. I can walk. I've imposed enough already. Adam's mouth curved in a hint of a smile. Stubborn. That'll serve you well out here. The cabin was simple but clean, with a main room that served as both kitchen and living area. A stone fireplace stood against one wall, a pot of something that smelled delicious simmering over the low flames. 2 doors led off from the main room bedrooms, Clara assumed. It's not much, Adam said, but it's home. It's wonderful, Clara replied honestly. After the opulence of her father's house, with its suffocating formality and constant demands for perfection, the cabin's simple warmth felt like a sanctuary. Adam helped her to a chair at the rough-hewn wooden table. Let me get you some water. Then we can see about food and finding you something more practical to wear than that dress. As he moved around the cabin, Clara took the opportunity to study him more closely. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. A small scar cut through his right eyebrow, and his hands were calloused from work. Not the soft hands of the businessmen her father associated with, but the capable hands of someone who built things, who survived through his own efforts. Thank you, she said as he placed a cup of water before her. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here. Adam shrugged. Frontier hospitality. No one survives out here alone. Clara sipped the water, relief flooding through her as it soothed her parched throat. I'll find a way to repay you, and I won't stay long. Once I've rested, I can continue on to. She faltered, realizing she had no destination in mind. Her plan had extended only to escaping, not to what came after. Adam seemed to read her thoughts. No need to figure everything out tonight. Rest first. Tomorrow is soon enough to make plans. Clara nodded gratefully. The adrenaline that had carried her through the day was fading fast, leaving bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. I'll show you where you can sleep, Adam said, holding out a hand to help her up. And don't worry about your horse. I'll tend to her. The spare bedroom was small but comfortable, with a narrow bed covered in a handmade quilt. A wash basin stood on a small table beneath a window that looked out over the prairie. There's water in the pitcher for washing, Adam said, and I'll find you something to wear that isn't quite so noticeable. Clara felt a blush warm her cheeks as she looked down at her bedraggled wedding dress. It seemed appropriate to wear it, given the circumstances, a final act of defiance. A smile ghosted across Adam's face. I admire the sentiment. He stepped back toward the door. Rest well, Miss Caldwell. You're safe here. After he left, Clara carefully removed the ruined wedding dress, laying it across a chair. In her chemise and petticoat, she used the water in the basin to wash away the dust of the trail. The cool water against her skin was a blessing, and she found herself fighting to keep her eyes open as fatigue settled deeper into her bones. She climbed into the bed, the quilt soft against her skin. Through the window, she could see the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Stars that looked the same as they had back in Great Bend, yet somehow different, brighter perhaps, or more promising. As sleep claimed her, Clara's last conscious thought was that for the first time in years, she was making choices for herself. Whatever tomorrow might bring, that alone was worth the risk she had taken. When Clara woke the next morning, it took her several moments to remember where she was. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow across the simple room. The events of the previous day came rushing back, her escape, the desperate ride, finding Adam Forrester's homestead. She sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. The ride had taken more of a toll than she'd realized. A folded stack of clothing sat on the chair where her wedding dress had been. In its place was a note written in a firm, clear hand. Thought these might fit. Come out when you're ready. AF. The clothes were simple but practical. A cotton shirt, a pair of trousers that appeared to have been taken in at the waist, and suspenders. Clara hesitated only briefly before putting them on. The shirt was loose but comfortable, and the pants, while still too large, stayed up with the help of the suspenders. She used a strip torn from her petticoat to tie back her hair. The main room was empty when Clara emerged, but the door to the cabin stood open. Outside, she could hear the rhythmic sound of an axe splitting wood. She moved to the doorway and paused, watching as Adam worked. He'd removed his shirt in the morning heat, and Clara found herself momentarily transfixed by the play of muscles across his back and shoulders as he swung the axe. It was a far cry from the pampered men of Great Bend society. Feeling her cheeks warm, Clara cleared her throat. Adam turned, lowering the axe. "Good morning," he said, reaching for his shirt and pulling it on. "Was starting to think you might sleep the day away." "What time is it?" Clara asked. "Just past 9. Adam gestured toward the cabin. "There's coffee on the stove and some biscuits I made earlier." Clara's stomach rumbled at the mention of food, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since breakfast the previous day. "Thank you for the clothes," she said as they walked back to the cabin. "They were my younger brother's," Adam explained. "He left them when he moved on to California last year." Inside, Adam poured coffee for both of them while Clara helped herself to a biscuit. It was still warm and surprisingly good. "You're a fine cook, Mr. Forrester," she said, taking a second biscuit. "Adam," he corrected. "And cooking's a necessity when you live alone. Can't always rely on others out here." Clara nodded, understanding all too well what it meant to be self-reliant. "I've never cooked," she admitted. "We always had a housekeeper who took care of such things." Adam raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you led a comfortable life." "Comfortable, yes, but not free." Clara stared into her coffee cup. "My father is Jonathan Caldwell. He owns most of the businesses in Great Bend, including the bank." "I've heard of him," Adam said, his expression neutral. "Lot of influence in these parts." "Yes, and he's used every bit of it to control my life." The words came easier than Clara expected, perhaps because Adam was a stranger, or perhaps because she'd held them in for too long. "After my mother died, he became more controlling. I was to be the perfect daughter, the perfect ornament to attract the right business connections. When he arranged my marriage to Harmon Blackstone, it wasn't about my happiness. It was about merging their interests." Adam leaned back in his chair. "And Blackstone went along with it." Clara's hands tightened around her cup. Eagerly. "He's buried 2 wives already. The last one was barely 20. She died in childbirth less than a year after the wedding." "I've heard stories about Blackstone," Adam said. "None of them good." "The stories don't capture half of it," Clara replied. "The way he looks at women, like they're possessions to be acquired. When he looked at me during our engagement dinner, I knew I couldn't go through with it. I'd rather die than be his wife." Adam's expression darkened. "No woman should be forced into marriage, especially not to a man like that." Clara looked up, meeting his gaze. "Is that why you're helping me?" "Because you believe women should have choices." A shadow passed across Adam's face, something like old pain. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when people are denied the right to choose their own path." He stood, breaking the moment. "Finish your breakfast, then I want to show you something." Curious, Clara ate quickly, then followed Adam outside. He led her to the corral where her chestnut mare was grazing alongside a powerful black stallion. "Your horse needs rest," Adam said. She's a fine animal, but she wasn't bred for the kind of hard riding you put her through yesterday. Clara stroked the mare's nose. I didn't have much choice. She was the only horse I could take without being noticed. She'll recover with a few days' rest. Adam leaned against the fence. Which brings us to the question of what you plan to do next. The question hung in the air between them. Clara had been avoiding thinking about it, focusing instead on the immediate relief of escape. I don't know, she admitted. I have a little money jewelry I can sell. I thought perhaps I might go further west. California, maybe, like your brother. Adam nodded slowly. It's a possibility. But your father and Blackstone will be looking. Men like them don't give up easily when their pride is wounded. No, Clara agreed. They don't. You could stay here, Adam said, the offer made casually, as though suggesting nothing more significant than another cup of coffee. At least until things settle down. Clara studied him, trying to understand his motives. You barely know me. Why would you take such a risk? Adam met her gaze steadily. Because everyone deserves a chance at freedom, Miss Caldwell. And because I've been at odds with men like your father and Blackstone for most of my life. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Besides, I could use the help around here. Place this size is a lot for one person to manage. The offer was tempting. More than tempting, it was exactly what Clara needed. Time to think, to plan, to figure out who she was when not defined by her father's expectations. I accept, she said, on one condition. Adam raised an eyebrow. Which is, that you call me Clara. Miss Caldwell belongs to the life I left behind. Adam's smile widened, transforming his face and making him look younger, less weathered by life on the frontier. Clara it is, then. They spent the rest of the morning touring the homestead. Adam showed her the vegetable garden behind the cabin, the chicken coop where a dozen hens pecked and scratched, and the small herd of cattle grazing in a pasture beyond the barn. It's not much compared to Blackstone's operation, Adam said, but it's mine. Every acre, every animal, every fence post, built it all myself. It's impressive, Clara said, and meant it. There was pride in his voice when he spoke of his home, not the cold calculation she was used to hearing from her father when discussing his business holdings. Tomorrow I'll show you the creek that runs along the back of the property, Adam said as they walked back toward the cabin. Best fishing for miles around, Clara laughed. I've never been fishing. Adam stopped, looking at her in mock horror. Never been fishing. Now that's a tragedy we'll have to remedy immediately. His teasing tone made Clara smile. I've never done a lot of things that I suspect are considered essential out here. Well, we'll have to see about changing that, Adam said, his expression softening. But for now, how about I teach you something equally important for frontier life? What's that? How to make a proper stew. Adam gestured toward the cabin. I've got venison that needs using, and you said you've never cooked. The afternoon passed in a comfortable rhythm as Adam taught Clara the basics of preparing a meal. She proved to be a quick learner, watching carefully as he showed her how to chop vegetables, measure spices, and tend the fire to maintain the perfect temperature. When she accidentally added too much salt, they laughed together as Adam showed her how to balance the flavors. As the sun began to set, they sat down to enjoy the fruits of their labor. The stew was rich and hearty, and Clara felt an unexpected surge of pride knowing she had helped create it. Not bad for your first attempt at cooking, Adam said, reaching for another serving. I had a good teacher, Clara replied. Adam shrugged off the compliment. Just basic survival skills, speaking of which, there's something else we should discuss. His expression grew serious. If you're staying here, you should learn how to defend yourself. Clara set down her spoon. You mean with a gun? Adam nodded. Among other things. Men like your father and Blackstone won't give up easily. If they find you here, you need to be able to protect yourself." The thought sent a chill through Clara despite the warm evening. "Do you really think they'll come looking for me?" "I think it's better to be prepared than sorry," Adam replied. "Blackstone, especially men like him, don't take kindly to having what they consider theirs taken away." "I was never his," Clara said, her voice firm. "You and I know that, but men like Blackstone see the world differently." Adam's gaze was steady. "Will you let me teach you?" Clara thought of the cold, possessive look in Harmon Blackstone's eyes when he had kissed her hand at their engagement dinner. "Yes," she said. "Teach me everything I need to know." Over the next few days, Clara's education in frontier living began in earnest. Each morning, Adam taught her how to handle a revolver, starting with the basics of loading and unloading before moving on to aiming and firing. Clara's first attempts sent bullets wildly off target, but she persisted, determined to master this new skill. "You're holding your breath," Adam observed on the third day, standing close behind her as she aimed at a line of bottles set up on a fence post. "Try breathing naturally, then squeezing the trigger between breaths." Clara nodded, trying to ignore the warmth of his presence at her back. She followed his instructions, breathing in and out steadily before pulling the trigger on the exhale. The bottle shattered. "I did it," she exclaimed, turning to face Adam with a wide smile. "You did," he agreed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You're a natural." The praise warmed her more than it should have. In the days since her arrival, Clara had found herself increasingly aware of Adam, the way sunlight caught in his sandy brown hair, the sound of his laugh, the strength and gentleness of his hands as he guided hers on a tool or weapon. It was foolish, she told herself. She had known him less than a week. Yet there was something about Adam Forrester that drew her, something beyond his kindness in taking her in. The afternoons were filled with other lessons. How to mend fences, gather eggs without upsetting the hens, churn butter from the milk of the single dairy cow Adam kept. Clara absorbed it all, reveling in the practical knowledge that had been denied her in her father's house, where a lady's education focused on embroidery, piano playing, and making polite conversation. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. Sometimes they talked, Adam sharing stories of his life as a cowboy before he settled on his homestead, Clara telling him about books she had read and the dreams she had kept hidden from her father. Other times they sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts but somehow connected in the quiet moment. "When did you decide to settle here?" Clara asked one evening, a week after her arrival. "You mentioned working as a cowboy before." Adam nodded, his gaze on the horizon. "Rode the cattle trails for 5 years after the war, Texas to Kansas mostly, saved every penny I could." He gestured to the land around them. "Always wanted something of my own, something no one could take away." "You fought in the war?" Clara asked softly. "Tail end of it. Joined up in '64 when I was 17. Union Army." His expression grew distant. "Saw enough in those last months to know I never wanted to see anything like it again." Clara understood his reluctance to say more. "My father made his fortune during the war, selling supplies, financing ventures." He never spoke of the suffering, only the opportunities. Adam's mouth tightened. "There were plenty who profited from others' pain." "Is that why you dislike men like my father, because of the war?" Adam was quiet for a long moment. "That's part of it. The other part." He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "My sister married a man like Blackstone. Wealthy, influential, charming when he wanted to be, and cruel behind closed doors." Clara's heart sank. "What happened to her?" "She died, fell down the stairs, according to her husband." Adam's voice was flat, but Clara could hear the pain beneath the words. No one questioned it. He was too powerful, too respected. "I'm sorry," Clara said, reaching out to touch his arm. "Truly." Adam covered her hand with his own, the brief contact sending a jolt through her. "It was a long time ago. But it's why I couldn't turn you away when you showed up in a wedding dress, running from men who would control your life." The honesty of the moment hung between them, creating a connection that went deeper than their daily interactions. Clara found herself wanting to lean toward him to seek comfort in his strength, but propriety held her back. Adam seemed to sense her hesitation. He stood, breaking the moment. "It's getting late. We should turn in. Dawn comes early and there's plenty of work waiting tomorrow." Clara nodded, following him inside with a strange mix of emotions churning within her. Gratitude for his honesty, sorrow for his loss, and something else, something warm and uncertain that fluttered in her chest when he looked at her. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the familiar sounds of the prairie night through her open window, Clara realized that in just 1 week, this place had begun to feel more like home than her father's grand house in Great Bend ever had. The thought should have frightened her, this swift attachment to a place and a life so different from everything she had known. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, as though she had finally found where she belonged. With that comforting thought, Clara drifted into sleep, unaware that the peace she had found was soon to be threatened. The following morning dawned bright and clear. Clara rose early, eager to begin the day's work. She had grown to love the rhythm of life on Adam's homestead, the early mornings, with coffee and breakfast shared at the wooden table, the satisfaction of physical work that left her pleasantly tired at day's end. Adam was already outside when she emerged from her room, dressed in the work clothes that had become her daily uniform. She could hear him chopping wood, a sound that had become as familiar as the crow of the rooster that woke her each morning. Clara set about making breakfast, proud of how quickly she had learned her way around the kitchen. She had just finished frying bacon and was mixing batter for biscuits when Adam came in, carrying an armload of split wood for the stove. "Morning," he said, setting down the wood. "You're getting an early start." "I thought I'd try making biscuits on my own today," Clara replied, concentrating on getting the consistency of the dough right. Adam watched her work with an approving smile. "At this rate, you'll be running the place by yourself in no time," Clara laughed. "Hardly. I still have so much to learn." "You're learning faster than anyone I've ever seen," Adam said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. There was warmth in his voice that made Clara look up. Meeting his gaze for a moment, they simply looked at each other, something unspoken passing between them. Then the biscuit dough claimed Clara's attention again, and the moment passed. They ate breakfast together, discussing the day's tasks. Adam needed to ride the boundaries of his property, checking fences and looking for any signs of trouble. "Would you like to come along?" he asked as they cleared away the breakfast dishes. "It would be good for you to know the full extent of the property." Clara agreed eagerly. Since her arrival, she had seen only the immediate area around the cabin and barn. The chance to explore more of Adam's land and to spend the day riding with him was appealing. They saddled their horses after breakfast. Clara's mare had recovered from the hard ride of her escape and now seemed eager for exercise. Adam's black stallion, a powerful animal named Thunder, pranced impatiently as they mounted up. "We'll head north first," Adam said. "Follow the fence line all the way to the creek, then work our way back along the eastern boundary." The day was perfect for riding, warm but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers and prairie grass. Clara found herself relaxing in the saddle, enjoying the freedom of the open space around them. It was so different from the supervised rides she'd taken in Great Bend, always accompanied by a groom and confined to established trails. You ride well, Adam observed as they cantered across an open stretch of grassland. It was one of the few activities my father approved of, Clara replied. Though he always insisted I ride side saddle in town, said it was more ladylike, Adam snorted. Not very practical, though. No, Clara agreed with a smile, especially if you're fleeing an arranged marriage. Adam laughed, the sound rich and warm. I'd say you've proven that point definitively. They reached the creek by midday. It was wider than Clara had expected, the water clear and swift-moving. Cottonwood trees lined the banks, providing welcome shade for their midday rest. "This is beautiful," Clara said as they dismounted beneath one of the larger trees. "Does the creek run year-round?" "Most years," Adam replied, tying the horses where they could drink. "It's what makes this land so valuable. Water is life out here." They sat in the dappled shade, sharing the lunch they had packed: bread, cheese, and dried apple slices. Clara leaned back against the trunk of the cottonwood, feeling more content than she could remember being in years. "Tell me more about your brother," she said. "The one who went to California." "Daniel," Adam said, a fond expression crossing his face. 2 years younger than me. Always had big dreams. Couldn't wait to see what was beyond the next horizon. "Do you miss him?" Adam nodded. "Every day, but I understand why he left. Some people aren't meant to stay in one place." He glanced at Clara. "What about you? Any brothers or sisters?" "No," Clara replied. "Just me. My mother died when I was 8, influenza." "That's hard," Adam said quietly. "Losing a parent so young." "It changed everything," Clara admitted. "Before, my father was different, gentler. After she died, he became obsessed with his business, with status, and with controlling my life." "People cope with grief in different ways," Adam said. "Not that it excuses what he tried to do to you." "No," Clara agreed. "Nothing excuses that." She picked at a blade of grass. "Sometimes I wonder if he ever really saw me as a person or just as an asset to be managed." Adam was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth," he said finally, "I see you, Clara Caldwell, and you're no one's asset to be managed." The words touched Clara deeply. To be seen, to be recognized as her own person with her own value, it was all she had ever wanted. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." They finished their lunch and continued their ride, checking fences and boundary markers. Adam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of how he had acquired each parcel of his land, piece by piece, working and saving until he had built something he could be proud of. The sun was beginning its westward descent when they finally turned back toward the cabin. They rode at a relaxed pace, in no hurry to end the day's outing. "I've been thinking," Adam said as they crested a small rise that gave them a view of the cabin in the distance. "There's a social in town next Saturday. Dancing, food, that sort of thing. Might be a good chance for you to meet some of the neighbors." Clara tensed. "Is that safe? What if someone recognizes me?" "Great Bend's a good 30 miles from here," Adam said. "And the town near us, Willow Creek, is small enough that news travels slowly. Besides, with your hair different and dressed as you are now, I doubt anyone who knew you as Jonathan Caldwell's daughter would recognize you." Clara considered the idea. She had been at Adam's homestead for nearly 2 weeks now, with no sign that anyone was searching for her in this area. Perhaps it was safe to venture out. "What would I say if anyone asks who I am?" "You could be my cousin," Adam suggested. "Come to help out for the summer." The suggestion was practical, but Clara found herself unexpectedly disappointed by it. "Your cousin," she repeated. Adam glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Unless you'd prefer another explanation." There was a question beneath the question, one Clara wasn't sure how to answer. "No," she said finally. "Cousin works fine." They rode the rest of the way in silence, though it wasn't the comfortable quiet they usually shared. Something had shifted between them, a tension that hadn't been there before. As they approached the barn, Adam suddenly reined in his horse, his posture alert. "What is it?" Clara asked, instantly on guard. Adam pointed to the ground. "Tracks. Someone's been here while we were gone." Clara's heart began to race. "My father, Blackstone, can't tell," Adam said, dismounting to examine the tracks more closely. One rider came from the direction of town, circled the cabin, then headed back the same way. Fear, which had receded during her time at the homestead, came rushing back. "Do you think they're looking for me?" Adam's expression was grim. "Could be. Could also be just a passing traveler looking for directions or help," he remounted. "Either way, we'll need to be more careful. Keep a lookout." They approached the cabin cautiously, but everything appeared undisturbed. Still, the knowledge that someone had been there while they were gone cast a shadow over the remainder of the day. That night, Clara found it difficult to sleep. Every sound from outside had her sitting up in bed, straining to hear if it was just the wind or something more sinister. The idea that her father or Blackstone might have found her, might be planning to take her back to Great Bend, filled her with dread. It was past midnight when she heard a soft knock at her bedroom door. "Clara." Adam's voice was low. "Are you awake?" She slipped out of bed, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders before opening the door. Adam stood in the hallway, fully dressed, a lantern in one hand and his revolver in the other. "I heard something outside," he said. "Stay here while I check." "Be careful," Clara whispered, fear tightening her chest. Adam nodded, then moved silently toward the front door. Clara waited, listening intently. She heard the door open, then close again a few minutes later. Adam's footsteps returned, and relief washed over her when she saw him unharmed. "Nothing there now," he said. "Might have been an animal, but I've set some trip wires around the perimeter. If anyone approaches during the night, we'll know." "Do you really think they've found us?" Clara asked. Adam hesitated. "I don't know, but I won't take chances with your safety." The concern in his voice touched her. Without thinking, Clara reached out, taking his hand. "I'm sorry to bring this danger to your door." Adam's fingers closed around hers. "You have nothing to apologize for, Clara, nothing at all." They stood that way for a moment, connected by touch and shared concern. Then Adam gently released her hand. "Try to get some sleep. I'll keep watch for a while." Clara nodded, though she doubted sleep would come easily. "Good night, Adam." "Good night, Clara." He turned to go, then paused. "For what it's worth, I don't regret a single day since you arrived, no matter what happens." With that, he was gone, leaving Clara standing in her doorway with her heart beating faster than fear alone could explain. The next few days passed without incident, but a new wariness had entered their lives. Adam never ventured far from the cabin, and he made sure Clara knew how to use the rifle he kept over the fireplace, as well as the revolver he had been teaching her with. They took turns keeping watch at night, though no more mysterious visitors appeared. Despite the tension, life on the homestead continued. There were animals to tend, vegetables to harvest, repairs to make. Clara threw herself into the work with renewed determination, as though by mastering these frontier skills, she could somehow ensure her freedom. The day of the social in Willow Creek arrived with no further signs of trouble. Adam suggested they might be better off staying home, but Clara, tired of feeling like a prisoner again, even in a prison of her own choosing, insisted they go. "We can't live in fear forever," she said as they prepared to leave. "Besides, it might do us good to hear what news is circulating. If my father and Blackstone are searching this area, someone in town might know." Adam couldn't argue with her logic. "All right," he agreed, "but we'll be careful, keep to ourselves, listen more than we talk." Clara wore her best work shirt and a skirt Adam had purchased for her on his last trip to town. Her hair, which had been elaborately styled the day of her escape, was now simply braided. Looking in the small mirror Adam had hung in her room, Clara barely recognized herself. The pampered banker's daughter from Great Bend was gone, replaced by a woman with sun-bronzed skin, calloused hands, and confidence in her eyes. The change went deeper than appearance. In the 3 weeks since her escape, Clara had discovered strengths she never knew she possessed: physical endurance, practical skills, and a resilience that surprised her. She was no longer the woman who had obediently prepared for a marriage she dreaded. She was someone new, someone of her own making. Willow Creek was smaller than Great Bend, just a collection of buildings along a dusty main street. The social was being held in the town's modest church, which had been decorated with wildflowers and paper streamers for the occasion. A small band played on a makeshift stage, and tables laden with food lined one wall. As they entered, Clara felt a moment of panic. What if someone recognized her? What if her father had spread word of her disappearance throughout the county? But the faces that turned toward them showed only friendly curiosity, not suspicion or recognition. Adam Forrester, a middle-aged woman with a kind face, approached them. "We were beginning to think you'd become a complete hermit out there on your homestead." Adam smiled, tipping his hat to the woman. "Evening, Mrs. Miller. Just been busy with the spring planting." Mrs. Miller's curious gaze shifted to Clara. "And who might this young lady be?" "My cousin Clara," Adam said smoothly. "She's staying with me for a while, helping out around the place." "How lovely to meet you, dear," Mrs. Miller said. "We don't often see new faces in Willow Creek, especially not young ladies." "It's nice to meet you too," Clara replied, trying to sound natural. "Adam's told me how friendly everyone is here." "Well, we do our best to make folks welcome," Mrs. Miller said. "You must come by the general store while you're in town. My husband and I run it, and I'd be happy to show you around." After Mrs. Miller moved on to greet other arrivals, Adam and Clara made their way deeper into the church. Several other residents approached to introduce themselves, each curious about the newcomer but seemingly accepting of the cousin's story. The evening progressed pleasantly. Clara danced with Adam and a few other men who asked politely, though she noticed that Adam kept a watchful eye on her throughout. Between dances, they sampled the potluck offerings and listened to the conversations around them, alert for any mention of Great Bend or the Caldwell family. It was during one such conversation that Clara overheard something that made her blood run cold. "Offering quite a reward, from what I heard," a man was saying to his companion. $500 for information leading to her whereabouts." "What's the girl done to warrant that kind of money?" the other man asked. "Ran off from her wedding, apparently. Left some big cattle baron standing at the altar. Name's Blackstone, I believe." Clara froze, her hand tightening on Adam's arm. He had heard it too. She could tell from the sudden tension in his posture. "Time to go," he murmured in her ear. They made their excuses and slipped out of the church as unobtrusively as possible. The night air was cool after the warmth of the crowded building, and Clara took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. $500, she said as Adam helped her onto her horse. "He must be furious to offer that much." "It's not the amount that worries me," Adam replied, mounting his own horse. "It's the fact that they've expanded the search this far from Great Bend." He glanced back at the church. "We need to be more careful, no more trips to town for a while." They rode in silence, both lost in thought. The knowledge that Blackstone was actively searching for her with such determination cast a shadow over the evening that had started so promisingly. As they approached the homestead, Adam suddenly pulled up short. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice tight. Clara followed his gaze and saw what had alarmed him: light flickering in the windows of the cabin. light they hadn't left burning. "Stay here," Adam said, drawing his revolver. "If you hear shots, ride for the Miller place in town." "I'm not leaving you," Clara protested, reaching for the small revolver Adam had given her to carry. Adam looked as though he wanted to argue but nodded instead. "Stay behind me then, and be ready to run if I tell you to." They approached cautiously, tying their horses at a distance from the cabin. Adam moved silently, years of frontier living having taught him how to avoid making noise. Clara followed as quietly as she could, the revolver clutched tightly in her hand. They were within 20 yards of the cabin when the door opened, spilling more light into the yard. A figure stepped onto the porch, a man, tall and well-dressed, his face hidden in shadow. "I know you're out there, Forrester," the man called. "No need for all this sneaking around." "I just want to talk." Clara's heart seemed to stop. She knew that voice, had heard it speaking honeyed words that disguised cold calculation. It was a voice she had hoped never to hear again. "Blackstone," she whispered, the name a curse on her lips. Adam's expression hardened. "Stay here," he said firmly, then before Clara could protest, he stepped forward into the light. "This is private property, Blackstone," he called. "You're trespassing." Harmon Blackstone stepped further into the light. He was, as Clara remembered, tall, imposing, with iron-gray hair and cold eyes that missed nothing. He was dressed for traveling, but even his trail clothes were finer than most men's Sunday best. "Ah, there you are," Blackstone said, his tone falsely pleasant. "I was beginning to think I'd have to wait all night for the pleasure of your company." His gaze moved past Adam, scanning the darkness. "And where is my runaway bride, hiding in the shadows?" Adam moved to block his line of sight. "There's no one here but me." "Whatever business you think you have, you're mistaken," Blackstone laughed, the sound chilling in its lack of warmth. "Let's not play games, Forrester. I know she's here. Jonathan Caldwell's precious daughter, who thought she could humiliate me and get away with it." His expression hardened. "No one does that to me. No one." From her hiding place, Clara could see Adam's stance shift subtly, ready for confrontation. "I think you should leave, Blackstone. Now." "Not without what I came for," Blackstone replied. "Clara belongs to me. We had an agreement, her father and I." "Clara doesn't belong to anyone," Adam said, his voice deadly quiet. "And she certainly doesn't belong to you." Blackstone's face twisted with anger. "Who are you to interfere? Some nobody cowboy with a patch of dirt and a few scrawny cattle. Do you know who I am? What I can do to you?" "I know exactly who you are," Adam replied. "A man who thinks money and power give him the right to control others. A man who sees women as property to be traded. And I know what you did to your last wife." Blackstone's hand moved to his side, where Clara could now see he wore a holstered revolver. "Be careful, Forrester. Making accusations like that could be hazardous to your health." Clara couldn't stand it any longer. She wouldn't hide while Adam faced danger on her behalf. Stepping out of the shadows, she moved to stand beside him, her own revolver raised. "He's not making accusations, Harmon," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He's stating facts, and I'm not going anywhere with you. Not now, not ever." Blackstone's eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance, the work clothes, the simple braid, the revolver held with confidence in her hand. "Look at you," he sneered. "Playing at being a frontier woman. This isn't you, Clara. You're a lady bred for fine houses and society, not this." He gestured dismissively at their surroundings. "You don't know me," Clara replied. "You never did. You saw what my father wanted you to see, a compliant daughter who would do as she was told. But that's not who I am. Not anymore." "Your father is frantic with worry," Blackstone said, changing tactics. "Is this how you repay his care all these years? By running off with some cowboy?" "My father was going to sell me to the highest bidder," Clara shot back. He didn't care about my happiness, only about the business advantages of our marriage. Blackstone's face darkened. Enough of this. You're coming back to Great Bend with me, Clara, one way or another. His hand moved toward his gun, but Adam was faster. In one smooth motion, he stepped in front of Clara and drew his revolver. I wouldn't, Adam said quietly. I've been working this land for 5 years, Blackstone. Every day from dawn till dusk makes for steady hands and a good eye. He nodded toward the older man's holster. Can you say the same? For a tense moment, Blackstone seemed to be weighing his options. Then, with a cold smile, he let his hand fall away from his weapon. This isn't over, he said. You think you're safe out here. I have resources you can't imagine. Men who'll do what I ask without question. This is just the beginning. Maybe, Adam acknowledged. But tonight, you're going to get on your horse and ride away. And if you ever set foot on my property again, I won't be asking you to leave. The threat hung in the air between them. Finally, Blackstone turned toward his horse, which was tethered near the cabin. Enjoy your time playing house, Clara, he called over his shoulder. It won't last. They watched in tense silence as he mounted and rode away, disappearing into the darkness. Only when the sound of hoofbeats had faded completely did Adam lower his weapon. Are you all right? He asked, turning to Clara. She nodded, though her hands were shaking now that the confrontation was over. How did he find us? Someone in town must have recognized you, Adam said, guiding her toward the cabin. Or made the connection when they heard about the reward. Inside, they found evidence of Blackstone's intrusion drawers opened, Clara's few possessions examined. He had been searching for confirmation that she was indeed staying there. He'll be back, Clara said, sinking into a chair at the kitchen table. Or he'll send others. He won't give up easily. Adam began putting things back in order. No, he won't. Men like Blackstone don't accept defeat. He glanced at Clara. We need to consider our options. I could leave, Clara said quietly. Go further west like I first planned. You shouldn't have to deal with this danger because of me. Adam stopped what he was doing and came to kneel beside her chair. Is that what you want, to leave? Clara looked at him, at this man who had taken her in without question, who had taught her to be self-sufficient, who had stood between her and danger without hesitation. The thought of leaving him made her heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. No, she admitted. It's not what I want. But I don't see another way. Adam took her hands in his. There's always another way, Clara. We just have to find it. He seemed to be weighing his words carefully. I've been thinking. There's a legal way to ensure Blackstone can never claim you. What do you mean? Marriage, Adam said simply. If you were married to someone else, neither your father nor Blackstone would have any legal claim on you. Clara stared at him, trying to understand what he was proposing. You mean, us, you and me? Adam nodded. It wouldn't have to be. I mean, it could be in name only. An arrangement for your protection. Once Blackstone gives up, we could seek an annulment if you wanted. The practical nature of the proposal stung more than Clara would have expected. An arrangement, she repeated, for my protection. Something shifted in Adam's expression. Unless. Unless what? He took a deep breath. Unless you wanted it to be more than that. Clara's heart began to race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. What are you saying, Adam? I'm saying that these past weeks with you have been the best of my life, he admitted. That the thought of you leaving tears me apart. That I've been falling in love with you since the moment you showed up in that wedding dress, defiant and determined. He squeezed her hands gently. But I would never want you to feel trapped again. So if marriage doesn't appeal to you, we'll find another way. Clara felt tears well in her eyes. You love me, more than I thought possible, Adam said softly. But your freedom matters more to me than my feelings. Clara reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. What if I told you that being with you makes me feel more free than I've ever felt? That I've been falling in love with you two day by day, lesson by lesson? Hope dawned in Adam's eyes. Have you? In answer, Clara leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question asked and answered, then deepened as Adam pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Is that a yes?" Adam asked, his voice rough with emotion. Clara smiled. "Yes to marrying you for protection, and yes to it being much, much more than that." The relief and joy on Adam's face made Clara's heart soar. For a moment, they simply held each other, the danger temporarily forgotten in the wonder of newfound love acknowledged. But reality couldn't be held at bay for long. "Blackstone won't give up easily," Adam said. "Even if we marry, he might still try to force you to return." "Then we'll face him together," Clara replied. "I'm not the same woman who fled Great Bend. I won't be intimidated anymore." Adam nodded, pride evident in his expression. "We'll need to be prepared, and we should marry quickly before he can return with reinforcements." "How quickly?" "Tomorrow, if possible," Adam said. "There's a justice of the peace in Willow Creek. If we ride at first light, we could be married by noon." The idea of becoming Adam's wife so soon sent a thrill through Clara. It wasn't the grand wedding her father had planned with Blackstone, with imported lace and society guests. It would be simple, honest, and chosen freely like everything about her new life. "Tomorrow," she agreed. "But tonight." "Tonight we prepare," Adam finished. "Blackstone might return before morning. We need to be ready." They spent the next few hours securing the cabin, checking weapons, and discussing strategies should Blackstone or his men appear. As they worked, a new understanding flowed between them, partners now in more ways than one, facing danger together. When all was prepared, they sat together at the kitchen table, hands linked, talking of the future they hoped to build. Despite the threat hanging over them, Clara felt a peace she had never known before. Whatever came, she was where she belonged, with the man she chose. "Try to get some sleep," Adam said eventually. "I'll take first watch." Clara nodded, though she doubted sleep would come easily. Before rising from the table, she leaned over to kiss Adam once more, still marveling at the freedom to do so. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. Adam's smile was like sunrise breaking over the prairie. "I love you too, Clara Caldwell. Tomorrow you'll be Clara Forrester." "I like the sound of that," she replied, feeling a happiness that transcended the danger they faced. As she prepared for bed, Clara thought about the strange path that had led her to this moment. A month ago, she had been a prisoner in her father's house, dreading a future mapped out without her consent. Now she was choosing her own destiny, embracing a life and a love that were entirely her own. Whatever Harmon Blackstone might do, whatever challenges lay ahead, Clara knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never regret the day she fled an arranged marriage and found sanctuary with a cowboy who saw her for who she truly was. Morning came with no sign of Blackstone or his men. Adam and Clara prepared quickly, both anxious to reach Willow Creek and complete the marriage that would legally bind them together. Clara wore her cleanest shirt and the skirt from the social, while Adam donned the one good suit he owned, kept for special occasions. As they rode toward town, the rising sun gilded the prairie grass, turning the landscape into a sea of gold. It seemed a good omen, light breaking through after darkness, hope emerging from fear. Willow Creek was just coming to life when they arrived. A few early risers nodded greetings as Adam and Clara made their way to the small house that served as both home and office for Judge Peterson, the local justice of the peace. The judge was a thin, grizzled man with sharp eyes that missed little. He listened with interest as Adam explained their situation, not the full truth, but enough to convey the urgency of their request. "Seems to me you young folks are in quite a hurry," Judge Peterson observed, looking from Adam to Clara. "Any particular reason for the rush?" Clara met his gaze steadily. "We love each other, Judge Peterson, and life's too uncertain to wait when you know what you want." The old man's eyes softened. "Can't argue with that. Waited too long myself once and lived to regret it." He nodded. "I'll marry you, but we'll need witnesses." "I'll fetch Mrs. Miller from the store," Adam offered, "and perhaps Mr. Thompson from the livery." While Adam went to find witnesses, Clara remained with the judge, answering his questions about her visit to Willow Creek and her cousin Adam. She kept her responses vague but friendly, careful not to contradict the story they had established at the social. By mid-morning, all was arranged. Mrs. Miller had not only agreed to witness the ceremony, but had brought a small bouquet of wildflowers for Clara. Mr. Thompson, the blacksmith, arrived in his Sunday best, clearly pleased to be part of the occasion. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. Standing in Judge Peterson's parlor, Clara and Adam exchanged simple vows, promising to love, honor, and protect each other for all their days. When Adam slipped a plain gold band onto Clara's finger, a ring that had belonged to his mother, he explained later tears of joy spilled down her cheeks. "By the authority vested in me by the state of Kansas," Judge Peterson proclaimed, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Adam's kiss was tender and reverent, a promise of all that was to come. For a moment, Clara forgot about Blackstone, forgot about the danger. There was only this man and the life they would build together. Mrs. Miller insisted on hosting an impromptu wedding breakfast at her home behind the general store. "It's not every day we have a wedding in Willow Creek," she declared. "Especially not one so romantic." Over eggs, biscuits, and preserves, the small group celebrated. Clara found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, the weight of her former life lifting with each passing hour as Clara Forrester. It was early afternoon when they finally prepared to return to the homestead. Adam was helping Clara mount her horse when a commotion at the end of the street caught their attention. A group of riders was approaching 5 men on horseback, led by a figure Clara recognized instantly, despite the distance. Harmon Blackstone had returned, and this time he had brought reinforcements. "Get to the judge's house," Adam said urgently. "Tell him what's happening. If Blackstone tries anything, the law should be on our side now." Clara nodded, turning her horse toward Judge Peterson's residence. She had barely gone 10 yards when Blackstone spotted her. "Clara," he called, spurring his horse forward. "Stop right there." Adam moved his mount to intercept, positioning himself between Clara and the approaching men. By now, their confrontation had drawn attention. Townspeople were emerging from buildings, watching with concern as the scene unfolded in their normally quiet street. "That's far enough, Blackstone," Adam called as the riders drew near. Blackstone reined in his horse, his men forming a loose semicircle behind him. "I warned you this wasn't over, Forrester. I've come to take back what's mine." "Nothing here belongs to you," Adam replied, his voice carrying in the tense silence that had fallen over the street. Judge Peterson emerged from his house, making his way toward the confrontation. "What's all this commotion about?" he demanded, his thin frame somehow imposing in its righteousness. Blackstone surveyed the old man dismissively. "This is a private matter, old-timer, between me and these two." "Nothing in my town is private when it involves a disturbance of the peace," the judge replied sharply. "Now state your business or move along." "My business," Blackstone said, pointing at Clara, "is with her. She's engaged to be married to me, and this man has abducted her." A murmur ran through the gathering crowd. Judge Peterson's bushy eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. Is that so? He turned to Clara. Young lady, would you care to respond to this accusation? Clara straightened in her saddle, meeting Blackstone's cold gaze without flinching. I was never willingly engaged to this man. My father arranged a marriage against my wishes, and I left of my own free will. She moved her horse forward to stand beside Adam's. And as of this morning, I am already married to Adam Forrester. Blackstone's face contorted with rage. You little fool. Do you think some backwater justice's ceremony will stop me? Your father signed a contract. You're legally promised to me. Actually, Judge Peterson interjected, a woman's marriage supersedes any prior engagement, especially one arranged without her consent. He peered at Blackstone over his spectacles. And I'll thank you not to insult my authority or my town, sir. Blackstone's men shifted uneasily, clearly not having expected to face resistance from the townspeople, who were now gathering in greater numbers. Mrs. Miller had emerged from her store with her husband, who Clara now noticed was carrying a shotgun. Mr. Thompson stood nearby, his blacksmith's hammer in hand. Seeing his advantage slipping, Blackstone changed tactics. Clara, he said, his tone softening to the persuasive one she remembered from Great Bend society functions. Your father is ill with worry. He just wants you home safe. Whatever grievance you have, surely we can discuss it reasonably. My father lost the right to know my whereabouts when he tried to sell me to you, Clara replied firmly, and I am home now. This isn't over, Blackstone snarled, the mask of civility dropping. You think you're safe because of a few backwards townsfolk. Your father has connections throughout the territory. There isn't a place you can hide, that's enough, interrupted a new voice. Sheriff Davis, a stocky man with a gray mustache, pushed through the crowd. I don't know what's happening here, but I won't have threats made in my town. Sheriff, Blackstone said, switching to a tone of injured dignity. I'm simply trying to retrieve my fiancée who has been led astray by this man. She's not your fiancée, Adam said. She's my wife, legally married this morning with witnesses present. The sheriff looked from Blackstone to Adam and Clara, then to Judge Peterson, who nodded confirmation. Well then, he said, seems to me there's nothing more to discuss. The lady's made her choice and the law recognizes it. This isn't the end, Blackstone warned, but Clara could see uncertainty in his eyes for the first time. He had expected to intimidate a lone cowboy on an isolated homestead, not to face the united front of a small town. Actually, Adam said quietly, I think it is the end. You've lost, Blackstone. The sooner you accept that, the better for everyone. For a moment, it seemed Blackstone might order his men to action despite the odds against them. Then, with a look of cold fury, he jerked his horse around. Let's go, he snapped to his men. This backwater isn't worth our time. As they rode away, the tension in the street gradually dissipated. Townspeople approached Adam and Clara, offering congratulations on their marriage and support against Blackstone's threats. You two should stay in town tonight, Sheriff Davis suggested. Just to be safe, I wouldn't put it past men like that to try something on the road back to your place. Adam and Clara exchanged glances. We appreciate the offer, Adam said, but our home is waiting. We'll be careful. The ride back to the homestead was tense, both of them watching for any sign of Blackstone's men, but they arrived without incident. As they approached the cabin, Clara felt a surge of emotion. This was her home now, truly her home, not just a sanctuary but the place where she belonged, with the man she had chosen. Adam helped her dismount, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. Tradition says I should carry you over the threshold, he said with a smile. Clara laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. I thought we'd established that I'm not much for tradition. Some traditions are worth keeping, Adam replied, carrying her to the door. "Especially the ones that involve holding you close." Inside, the cabin seemed different somehow, not the physical space, but the feeling of it. What had been Adam's home was now theirs. Clara's few possessions, initially kept in the spare room, would now join Adam's in the main bedroom. Their lives would intertwine in 1,000 small ways, day by day, season by season. As Adam set her down, Clara kept her arms around his neck, looking up into the face of her husband. "Do you think he'll really give up?" she asked. Adam's expression grew serious. "Not immediately. Men like Blackstone don't accept defeat easily. But eventually, yes. When he realizes that pursuing you means facing not just me, but an entire community that stands with us." Clara nodded, taking comfort in his certainty. "And my father, that's a choice only you can make," Adam said gently. "Whether to contact him, to try to make him understand your decision." Clara considered this. The anger she felt toward her father was still raw, but beneath it lay years of complicated emotions: love, disappointment, the memory of happier times before her mother's death had hardened him. "Not yet," she decided. "Maybe someday, but not yet." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Whenever you're ready, if that day comes, I'll be with you." The promise settled around Clara like a warm blanket. "So," she said, changing the subject to lighter matters, "what does a frontier wife do on her wedding day?" A slow smile spread across Adam's face. "Well, traditionally, there would be a celebration with family and friends, dancing, feasting, that sort of thing. We had our feast at Mrs. Miller's," Clara noted, "but I believe we missed the dancing." "That can be remedied," Adam said, stepping back and offering his hand with a formal bow. "Mrs. Forrester, may I have this dance?" Clara placed her hand in his, a laugh bubbling up from her heart. "There's no music, Mr. Forrester." "We'll make our own," Adam replied, drawing her close. In the quiet of their cabin, they danced to a melody only they could hear, the rhythm of their hearts, the whisper of promises, the song of a future unfolding before them. It was nothing like the elaborate wedding Clara's father had planned, with its hired orchestra and formal dances. It was better, honest, intimate, and freely chosen. As the afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over their simple home, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she had found where she belonged. Not in her father's grand house in Great Bend, not in the life that had been planned for her, but here in a frontier cabin with a man who saw her, valued her, and loved her for exactly who she was. "I love you, Adam Forrester," she whispered as they swayed together in their makeshift wedding dance. Adam's arms tightened around her. "And I love you, Clara Forrester, now and always." The days following their wedding passed in a blend of ordinary tasks and extraordinary happiness. Each morning, Clara woke beside Adam, still marveling at the way their lives had intertwined so completely in such a short time. They worked side by side during the day, tending the garden, caring for the animals, making improvements to the cabin that was now truly their home. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch watching the sunset, talking about their day, their dreams, their future together. Sometimes they would read aloud from one of the few books Adam owned, their voices mingling in the quiet of the prairie night. There were challenges, of course. Clara was still learning the skills of frontier life, and there were moments of frustration when tasks that Adam could complete easily proved difficult for her. But she approached each new challenge with determination, and Adam's pride in her progress more than made up for the occasional struggle. A week after their wedding, they rode into Willow Creek for supplies. Clara felt a new confidence as they moved through the small town. No longer was she a fugitive in hiding. She was Mrs. Forrester, a respected member of the community, if still a new one. Mrs. Miller greeted them warmly at the general store. "How are you settling into married life?" she asked Clara as they selected items from the shelves. "Wonderfully," Clara replied honestly, "though I still have much to learn about keeping a frontier home." "All in good time," Mrs. Miller assured her. "No one expects you to know everything at once." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "And I must say, I've never seen Adam Forrester look so happy. The way he looks at you would melt the coldest heart." Clara felt a blush warm her cheeks. "He's a good man. I'm fortunate to have found him." As they were loading their purchases onto their horses, Sheriff Davis approached. "Afternoon, Forresters," he said with a nod. "Thought you might want to know Blackstone and his men were seen heading back toward Great Bend the day after your confrontation. Haven't been spotted in these parts since." Relief washed over Clara. "Thank you, Sheriff, that's good to hear." "Still, I'd keep my eyes open if I were you," the sheriff advised. "Men like that tend to nurse grudges." Adam nodded. "We'll stay alert, but it's good to know he's not lurking nearby." As they rode home, Clara felt lighter than she had in weeks. The immediate threat of Blackstone seemed to have passed, allowing her to focus more fully on building her life with Adam. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Clara traced the lines of Adam's face with her fingertips. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered. "When I left Great Bend, I was only thinking of escape. I never imagined I might find a home, a husband, a life I could truly call my own." Adam caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "And I never thought I'd find someone who would choose this life, choose me, when they could have had luxury and ease." "Luxury without freedom is just a prettier cage," Clara replied. "What I have with you is worth more than all my father's wealth." They settled into the rhythm of married life, each day bringing new experiences and deepening their connection. Summer gave way to autumn, and the golden prairie took on the rich, warm hues of the changing season. They harvested the garden, preserved food for the coming winter, and repaired the cabin to withstand the cold months ahead. It was during these preparations that Clara first noticed the changes in her body, the subtle fatigue, the unexpected moments of nausea, the tenderness that had nothing to do with her daily work. At first, she dismissed the symptoms as the result of her increased physical activity. But as they persisted, a different possibility began to form in her mind. She said nothing to Adam at first, not wanting to raise hopes or concerns prematurely. But when she missed her monthly courses for the second time, she could no longer deny the likelihood. They were sitting on the porch one evening in late October, watching the sun set in a blaze of crimson and gold, when Clara finally spoke the words she had been holding close to her heart. "Adam," she said softly, I believe I'm with child." Adam turned to her, his eyes wide with wonder. "A baby, our baby," Clara nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "I won't know for certain for a while yet, but all the signs are there." In one swift movement, Adam knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Clara," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "A family. We're going to be a family." The joy in his eyes brought tears to Clara's. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," Adam replied, pressing his lips to her hands. "I never dared hope for this much blessing in one lifetime." As autumn deepened, Clara's condition became more certain. Her body changed subtly at first, then more noticeably as the baby grew within her. Adam treated her with a tender protectiveness that Clara found both endearing and occasionally frustrating. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she protested one day when he insisted on carrying a basket of laundry that she could have managed easily. Adam grinned, unrepentant. "Humor me. I've waited my whole life to fuss over my pregnant wife." The winter of 1875-76 proved to be mild by Kansas standards, a blessing for which Clara was grateful. As her pregnancy progressed, she found the physical demands of frontier life increasingly challenging. But she adapted, finding new ways to contribute to their household when her changing body made certain tasks difficult. On a clear, cold day in February, they made the trip to Willow Creek for supplies and to visit the town's doctor, an elderly man named Dr. Harrison, who had delivered most of the children in the area over his long career. "Everything appears to be progressing normally," he assured them after examining Clara. "The baby is growing well, and you're maintaining your health admirably, Mrs. Forrester." "When?" Adam asked, the single word containing all his anticipation and anxiety. Dr. Harrison smiled. "Based on what Mrs. Forrester has told me, I'd expect the child to arrive in late May or early June, just in time for the spring flowers." They rode home in high spirits, making plans for the baby's arrival. Adam immediately began work on a cradle, carefully selecting wood and working on it in the evenings by the light of the fire. Clara sewed baby clothes from fabric purchased at the general store, her needle flying as she created tiny garments for the life that grew within her. As winter gave way to spring, the prairie burst into life around them. Wildflowers carpeted the grasslands, birds returned from their southern sojourn, and the days grew longer and warmer. Clara's body expanded with the season, her belly now a prominent curve beneath her dresses. One warm May afternoon, as Clara sat on the porch shelling peas, she spotted a cloud of dust on the distant road. A rider was approaching a single figure on horseback, coming from the direction of Willow Creek. "Adam," she called, setting aside her work. Adam emerged from the barn, shading his eyes against the sun as he looked toward the approaching rider. "Stay on the porch," he said, his hand moving instinctively to the revolver he still wore when working outside. As the rider drew nearer, Clara could see it was a man she didn't recognize, older, well-dressed, with gray hair showing beneath his hat. Something about his posture seemed vaguely familiar, though she couldn't place it. Adam moved to stand at the foot of the porch steps, positioning himself between Clara and the approaching stranger. When the rider was within hailing distance, he called out, "That's far enough. State your business." The man reined in his horse, regarding them with an expression Clara couldn't quite read from the distance. Then he removed his hat, and Clara's heart seemed to stop. "Father," she whispered. Jonathan Caldwell sat straight-backed on his horse, looking at his daughter as though seeing a ghost. "Clara," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "May I approach? I come alone and in peace." Adam glanced back at Clara, silently asking what she wanted. The sight of her father had unleashed a flood of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion, and beneath it all, a flicker of the love she had never quite been able to extinguish. "Let him come," she said softly. Adam nodded, though he remained watchful as Jonathan Caldwell dismounted and approached the cabin. As he drew closer, Clara could see that her father had aged in the months since she'd last seen him. New lines marked his face, and his shoulders, always so proudly squared, carried a slight stoop. "Clara," he said again as he reached the porch. His gaze moved to her swollen belly, and a complex mixture of emotions crossed his face. "You're with child?" "Yes," she replied, one hand moving protectively to her stomach. "Due next month." Jonathan turned to Adam, who had moved to stand beside Clara's chair. "You must be Forrester." "I am," Adam confirmed, his tone neutral but watchful. "Adam Forrester, Clara's husband." A silence stretched between them, taut with unspoken words. Finally, Clara broke it. "How did you find us?" Her father's expression softened slightly. "It wasn't easy. You covered your tracks well, but I never stopped looking." He hesitated. "May I sit? It's been a long ride." Clara nodded, and Jonathan took the other chair on the porch, removing his hat and placing it on his knee. Adam remained standing, one hand resting lightly on Clara's shoulder. "Why are you here, Father?" Clara asked. "If you've come to try to convince me to return—" "No," Jonathan interrupted. "That's not why I've come." He took a deep breath, as though gathering courage for what he needed to say. "I've come to apologize, Clara." Of all the things Clara had expected to hear, an apology was the last. For a moment she could only stare at him, disbelief evident in her expression. "I know it's too little, too late," her father continued. "What I did to you trying to force you into marriage with Blackstone was unforgivable. I see that now." "What changed?" Clara asked, still wary of this unexpected contrition. Jonathan's gaze dropped to his hands, which were clasped tightly together. "After you left, Blackstone showed his true colors, his rage, his cruelty. I began to hear stories, rumors about his previous marriages that I had dismissed before." He looked up, meeting Clara's eyes. "When I realized what I had been willing to condemn you to, for the sake of business and social standing, I couldn't live with myself." Clara felt Adam's hand tighten slightly on her shoulder, offering silent support. "It took me leaving for you to see the truth about Blackstone." "What about what I told you? My objections, my fears?" "I didn't listen," Jonathan admitted. "I was too consumed with my own plans, my own ambitions. Since your mother died, I've lost my way, forgotten what truly matters." He glanced at Clara's belly. "But I would like the chance to remember. To be part of your life again, if you'll allow it. To know my grandchild." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but Clara wasn't ready to forgive so easily. "You can't simply appear after months of silence and expect everything to be forgotten," she said. "You were willing to sacrifice my happiness, my very self, for your business interests." "I know," Jonathan said, his voice breaking slightly. "And I will regret that until my dying day. I don't expect your forgiveness, Clara. I don't deserve it. But I had to come to see you to tell you that I was wrong." He looked up at Adam. "And to meet the man my daughter chose for herself." Adam met his gaze steadily. "I love your daughter, Mr. Caldwell, more than anything in this world. I would die before I let anyone hurt her, including you." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Good, that's good," he turned back to Clara. "I won't impose on you further. I've said what I came to say, but if you could find it in your heart to write to me occasionally, to let me know how you and the child are faring, I would be grateful." Clara studied her father's face, looking for the stern, unyielding man who had ruled her life for so long. Instead, she saw someone older, sadder, and perhaps wiser, a man who had lost his way but was trying to find it again. "I can't promise you anything right now," she said finally. "There's too much between us, too much hurt, but I won't close the door entirely." She glanced up at Adam, who gave her a small nod of understanding. "You can stay for dinner if you like. It's a long ride back to town." Relief washed over Jonathan's face. "Thank you, I would like that very much." The meal was awkward at first, the conversation stilted and careful. But as they ate, the tension gradually eased. Jonathan asked about their life on the homestead, listened with genuine interest to Clara's descriptions of learning to cook, garden, and tend livestock. He studied Adam with a father's assessing gaze, but seemed to find no fault with the man his daughter had chosen. As the evening drew to a close, Jonathan rose to take his leave. "I've taken a room at the hotel in Willow Creek," he said. "I'll be there for a few days before returning to Great Bend." If you'd like to talk further," Clara nodded. "Perhaps we will." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind throughout the evening. "What about Blackstone? Is he still—" "No," Jonathan said firmly. "Our business dealings are concluded. After your departure, his behavior became erratic, dangerous. Others began to distance themselves as well. Last I heard, he had returned to Texas. He looked at Clara earnestly. But if he ever returns, if he ever threatens you again, you must let me know. Whatever else has happened between us, you are still my daughter, and I will use every resource at my disposal to protect you. The protective fierceness in his voice reminded Clara of the father she had known as a child, before ambition and social climbing had hardened him. It gave her hope that perhaps, with time, some part of their relationship might be salvaged. After Jonathan had departed, promising to visit Willow Creek again in a few months if welcomed, Clara and Adam sat together on the porch in the gathering twilight. "Are you all right?" Adam asked gently, his arm around her shoulders. Clara leaned into his embrace, considering the question. "I think so. It was unexpected, all of it. Do you believe him, about regretting what he did?" "Yes," Clara said after a moment. "I do. I don't think he would have come all this way, humbled himself like that, if he didn't truly regret his actions." She sighed. "It doesn't erase the past, but it does make the future seem less burdened." Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "You don't have to decide anything tonight. About your relationship with him, I mean. There's time." Clara nodded, grateful as always for his understanding. "I know, and I have you and soon our child. That's what matters most." As if in response to her words, the baby kicked vigorously, making Clara laugh and place Adam's hand on her belly to feel the movement. "Someone agrees," she said with a smile. Adam's expression as he felt their child move beneath his palm was one of pure wonder. "I will never get tired of that," he murmured. They sat together as darkness fell, talking of the future of the child who would soon join them, of plans for expanding the cabin as their family grew, of the seasons that would pass as they built their life together. The unexpected visit from Clara's father had stirred memories of the past, but it was the future that filled their thoughts and hearts as the first stars appeared in the velvet sky above their home. 2 weeks later, on a warm June morning with sunlight streaming through the bedroom window, Clara woke to the first pains of labor. The birth was long and difficult, testing Clara's strength and Adam's nerve. Mrs. Miller, who had experience assisting births, came to help, her calm presence a steadying force as the hours passed. As the sun was setting with a final push, and a cry that seemed to come from the depths of her being, Clara brought their child into the world. A son red-faced, squalling, and perfect in every way. "He's beautiful," Adam whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as Mrs. Miller placed the swaddled infant in Clara's arms. "Clara, he's beautiful. You're beautiful. I love you both so much." Clara looked down at their son, overwhelmed by the rush of love that flooded through her. This tiny being, part of her and part of Adam, represented everything she had gained by having the courage to flee an arranged marriage and forge her own path. "What shall we name him?" Adam asked, sitting beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders as they gazed at their child. Clara thought for a moment. "Matthew," she said finally. "It means gift from God, because that's what he is. What all of this is, you, him, our life together. A gift I never expected to receive." "Matthew Forrester," Adam repeated, touching their son's tiny hand with one gentle finger. "Welcome to the world, little one. Welcome home." In the years that followed, the Forrester homestead thrived and expanded. Adam's careful management and hard work paid off, allowing them to add more land, more cattle, and eventually to build a larger home next to the original cabin. Clara grew into her role as a frontier wife and mother with confidence and grace, her days filled with purpose and her nights with love. Jonathan Caldwell became a regular visitor, gradually earning a place in their lives through his consistent efforts to make amends for the past. When a second child arrived, a daughter, they named Elizabeth after Adam's sister. Jonathan's joy was second only to that of the proud parents. Harmon Blackstone never returned to trouble them. Reports reached them occasionally through trading partners and travelers he had suffered financial reversals in Texas, had tried and failed to rebuild his empire, had eventually died alone, unmourned by those who had known him. On a golden autumn day in 1881, 5 years after their hasty wedding in Judge Peterson's parlor, Adam and Clara stood on the porch of their home, watching as Matthew and Elizabeth played in the yard with the puppies born to their faithful herding dog. "You ever regret it?" Adam asked, his arm around Clara's waist. "Leaving Great Bend, giving up the life you might have had?" Clara looked up at him, at the face that had become as familiar and necessary to her as breathing. "Not for a single moment," she replied. "How could I regret finding freedom, finding you?" Adam's smile was as warm as the day they had met. "I still can't believe my good fortune that you appeared at my door in a wedding dress, running from one life and somehow finding your way into mine." "Not somehow," Clara corrected, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Because you offered me sanctuary when I needed it most, because you saw me as I truly was, not as someone to be controlled or possessed." Adam gathered her close, his kiss a reaffirmation of all they had built together. "And I always will," he promised, "until the end of our days." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the prairie in shades of gold and crimson, Clara Forrester stood in the circle of her husband's arms, watching their children play, and knew that she had found something far more precious than the wealth and status her father had once valued so highly. She had found freedom. She had found love. She had found home. And it had all begun with a desperate flight, a stolen wedding dress, and a cowboy who had opened his door to a stranger and in doing so had opened his heart to the woman who would become his wife, his partner, and his greatest joy. In the wild expanse of the Kansas prairie, Clara and Adam Forrester had written their own story, not one dictated by social expectations or arranged by others, but one chosen freely, day by day, season by season, with courage, love, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved the chance to determine their own destiny. It was, Clara thought as she leaned against her husband's steady strength, the greatest gift one person could give another, the space and support to become who they were truly meant to be. Adam had given her that gift, and in return, she had given him her heart, her trust, and a family to fill the home he had built with love and laughter. As twilight deepened and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Adam and Clara called their children in for supper, closing the door on another day in the life they had created together, a life that had begun when she was fleeing an arranged marriage, and he had offered her sanctuary.